You're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RBLR Lightning. As always, my name is Jake Ricker. Alongside me, it's Joe Zamataro, Matt Gannon. Guys, back to the show. We are back here for another off-season episode. And guys, it's time to put your thinking caps on today because we're going to be taking a look at the Lightning free agency and what their roster could look like situation. And let me tell you, it's a doozy because as JBB mentioned in his exit interview, which we talked about in last week's episode, and if you missed that one, you can go back to YouTube and like and subscribe there so you don't miss out on future episodes and check that one out. But it's going to be very complicated and there's a lot to get into. So first and foremost, guys, how you doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be with you.
I'm doing just fine. It's my birthday when this episode comes out tomorrow, so I'm having a good week. I'm excited for the festivities to come, but you know, a little on edge about the topics we're going to talk about today. It's kind of a taboo.
Happy birthday,
almost.
buddy!
Thank you.
Yes, happy birthday.
And you know,
drop a happy birthday comment down low for Matt.
You know who else's birthday it is tomorrow? It's Corey
that?
Perry's birthday. We share a birthday, so
there you go. Corey Perry. Well, he's one of the guys that we're going to be talking about as well because he's an unrestricted free agent coming up in this offseason. But before we get into all of the fun stuff that comes with the cap and what the Lightning are going to do, a couple of things that we should mention. First and foremost, Victor Hedman was the Lightning's nomination for the King Clancy Memorial Trophy. Which is, for those that don't know, is the trophy that the Lightning give out, or the NHL gives out, every year to the player who best exemplifies leadership qualities on and off the ice and who has made a significant impact in the NHL. So Victor Hedman was the nomination for the team, and nomination, Victor Hedman, they posted on social media today. He is trying to raise money for his selected charity, which is NAMI. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Victor Hedman said it with his thick Swedish accent, so it was kind of hard to understand. But basically, the charity raises awareness and helps people with mental illness. And if you donate to the cause through the link that the Lightning posted, you can have a chance to be entered to win a Ultimate Bolts game day experience with Victor Hedman. So a really cool thing that the Lightning are doing with Hedman being nominated for the Clancy Trophy. So if you want to go check that out and possibly get the game day experience, head over to the Lightning social media page and check that out. Guys, I don't know about you, but I would love to do that.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. And it's the National Alliance on Mental Illness is the one that the charity that he's doing this for. And I saw that they have like a raffle going on, and something like you can get in for as cheap as $10, donate $100, all goes to a good cause, and something that I'll be hitting the donate button myself as well because why not have a little bit of a tax write-off with a chance to beat Victor Hedman as well.
There you go.
And do something good all at the same time.
Exactly. It would be for a great cause and potentially a great way to spend some of your, well, I guess this would take place at the beginning of the season, but an exciting thing to look forward to. Now, the other thing for the Lightning going on this offseason, we mentioned it, is that Nick Perbix and Mikey Eyssimont have been playing for Team USA in the tournament that they're in right now. They've won both of their first 2 games, so congratulations to Team USA. The Lightning players have had somewhat of an impact so far. Eyssimont does have 2 points, both of those coming on assist. Nick Perbix does not have any points yet. He is the defenseman, but he's played a pretty considerable amount of ice time, and he is a +1 so far. So nothing too much to really dive into because these guys haven't played a ton. Again, only 2 games played right now, but Team USA is looking good, and it's great to see guys like Perbix and Eyssimont getting mixed in there and getting some practice reps during the offseason.
Yeah, good
Now,
for them. You're not gonna, at least with both of those guys, you're not gonna be putting up crazy stats. And sometimes no stats are good stats. To be a plus and to have 2 assists, hey, that's pretty good. Unfortunately, I haven't watched any of the games, but it's good to see that we have some representation for Team USA.
all right, let's get into the whole cap situation and the fun that comes along with this. So the Lightning are going to have right around about $8 million in cap space, and that comes from the $1 million projected cap increase. And then, of course, Brent Seabrook is still going to be on long-term injured reserve. His cap hit is about $6.875 million. So the Lightning have not that much room to work with, considering how many free agents they actually need to sign. Guys like Alex Killorn, you have Corey Perry, Belmar, Ross Colton, a bunch of the guys from the minors, and the list goes on. So there's a lot of guys that the Lightning have to go in and sign, and it's not going to be easy. So I think the best way to try and do this is, first, I want to hear from you guys. Who would be your top priority targets for the Lightning for JBB if you're going to start looking at guys that you need to sign for next season?
Do you mean like guys we need to re-sign, or are you talking about other free agents from other teams?
Guys that we need to re-sign, because
okay.
I'm going to be quite honest with you. I don't know how many guys you're going to be able to actually sign in free agency, considering they're now you could the Lightning could go and take the route of, we're not going to bring back basically anybody, and we could go out and sign somebody in free agency, but that's might be a difficult path. Let's start with, are there any guys that you would want to bring back and be your top priorities on the team currently?
Oh, of course. After Alex Killorn, he's been he's been a crucial part of this team. I guess he's the air quote longest tenured Bolt, and he really had this late in his career kind of a coming out party. He had a career year this year. Despite him being one of the older guys on the team, I still wouldn't call him an old player. He's not washed up. He had a great year. I think I would really like to see him come back. And we got into this a little bit last week where he wants to come back, or he says I want to retire in Tampa. So hopefully they can do it. I'm not sure if it might be the right move. Of course, I don't want to see it, for too long, but he's definitely a priority. And another one, it's not a UFA, but Ross Colton. I think he's a really important piece, an underrated piece, a really, really underrated player on this team, kind of like Killorn.
Yeah, I mean, those two obviously are really important. I think Belmar's definitely going to be a casualty of this. But, I wouldn't mind seeing Corey Perry come back for another season. Wouldn't mind seeing, finding a way to get Killorn to stick around. I think that the core group of guys that are there, or, the majority of the team is good enough to make another run at a Stanley Cup. Missing Chernak was huge for that first round, and having Braden Point healthy, I think, could have put them over the edge in order to get what they needed to win. So I don't think a big shakeup is going to be necessary. He added a few pieces with Eyssimont and with Jeannot, and then also with Balcers, who never really got to fully see him in action before before he ended up going down and everything that happened with him. But there's a lot of hope that JBB can work his magic, and hopefully have some guys, especially Killer, take a discount, a home team discount. He's made it pretty obvious and put it out there that he really wants to continue to play for this team. And the question is, how badly does he want to play for this team? For what dollar amount, right?
I hate speculating, and I know that's what this whole show is going to be about, is it's a bunch of what ifs, but I think with a guy like Killorn, like, we know he's one of the coolest, most personable, best personality players on the team. He's just a straight up good guy. And same thing with Julian Breesbaugh. We know that he's not a cutthroat GM. He's a very respectable, well put together, classy guy. And I think, those two could sit down together. He might be able to wave his magic wand and work with Killorn and say, hey, like, we don't want to blow this team up. You are a core piece of this team, and we want to make it work. We think we're competitive, and we can make another run or 2 or 3 at the Stanley Cup. You know, if you want to be part of this team, we're going to need you to take a bit of a discount. You know, take a page out of Boston's book. You know, how many guys were playing way under their value. You know, Pasternak up until his new deal, Bergeron, Marchand, they were all being paid. I think, you know, the highest they were being paid was $7 million. So if you can just take the hometown discount and try to keep this team together, I think those two could probably find a way to make it work. But then it does open the door for other casualties, cap casualties to leave.
Plus, think about how horrible it'd be if we weren't reminded every single broadcast that's on national television that Killorn went to Harvard.
It wouldn't be a Lightning game without it. Now, Matt, I know you were talking about this is a lot of guesswork, which it is, but here I'll throw you some numbers at you guys. And I went on to Cap Friendly. We have to give a huge shout out to Cap Friendly for any of this stuff because it would not be possible to talk about without that website. It is absolutely amazing. But I went and I took Alex Killorn's contract and tried to find some comparable contracts that were signed around the time that he did. And I also heavily influenced on the same amount of games played and career points just to try to find something similar between these guys. And there were a couple of players that signed similar contracts ranging from $4 to $5 million. And remember, Killorn signed a $4.45 million deal, which is the one that's going up this season. And here's something interesting that I found. Most of the players that signed contracts like Killorn and had similar games played in points, they actually went down in salary after they went to sign a new deal. There's only one player who actually ended up getting more. Some of these guys, for example, is Carl Hagelin, who had a $4 million cap hit. He then signed a deal that got him at $2.7 million. Kyle Palomari is another guy. His cap hit basically stayed the same. He was at 4.65, went up to $5 million. Riley Smith is another one currently playing for the Vegas Golden Knights. Again, right around at that $5 million cap hit and basically stayed the same into his next couple of contracts. And then Chris Kreider, who is the one probably outlier in this, as he signed a $4.5 million deal and jumped all the way up to $6.5 million. And he's a big part of the New York Rangers team. So if you look
he
at
also is someone that's performing to that number as well. So that worked out well for both the organization and him.
Absolutely. Now you look at all those contracts, and I think you take into consideration, okay, Killorn had his best career year, so he obviously deserves more. He was making 4.5, so you throw him maybe in the 5 on the low end to $6 million range, somewhere in there is what he's actually probably get 5.56 on the open market. I don't know how much that hometown discount is, but I feel like if the Lightning can get Killorn for around $5 million, maybe even a little bit more than that, that would be a win for the team. And his contract is really the driving force for the Lightning for everything else, whether Ross Colton is coming back, how much you can dip into free agency, what kind of players you're going to have to call up from the AHL. His contract is the big driving factor. So what are your guys' thoughts on what Killorn could potentially sign for?
That it's tough because he's in a fairly unique situation being at his age and coming off of a career year like that. You have to weigh two things, and one of those things is term. How long do we want to sign him? Of course, you'd like to have him for forever, but you don't want to have him at an unreasonable cap hit. But the more term you do give out, the more guaranteed money you give out, you can bring that cap hit down a little bit further. And I wouldn't mind seeing Killorn here for a 3 or a 4 year deal. I think 5 might be pushing it. I think 4 might even be pushing it. But I think if we can get him for 3 or 4 years at $5 million, I don't know. Is that a reasonable offer? Is that insulting to Killorn? I feel like it's really not that bad of an offer at all. 5 by 3. I can see it happening. He might be able to command a little bit more on the cap, but I don't really think it'd be worth bringing him back for more than that, especially because of just how difficult it would be as well.
Yeah, I don't even know that I like the $5 million number, to be honest. I mean, he had he had a career year, but I don't know that he's not going to better his numbers. He's 33. And so if it's a 3-year deal, he's going to end up being 36 by the end of it. It's you're starting to get starting to get into territory where your production has to go down. And while he had a career year, I just don't see him being able to be that valuable of an asset at $5 million. I think there's other people that you can bring in that might be able to do better. And I have to look at it more myself as well to find who would be an appropriate replacement. But if you could go down to, even 4, I think that's a pretty decent discount. It gives you more room to play. And if he loves it here so much, he would want the team to not be completely handcuffed and not be able to field a competitive team. So it works out on both fronts.
Well, Killorn has said that if he can't play or he would retire. Now, I don't know if he actually really would do that, but he has said on multiple occasions that he only wants to play in Tampa and doesn't want to go anywhere else. So you could argue, I think is what you're saying, Joe, is that maybe he's worth 5 on the open market. He takes that hometown discount and he signs another 4.5, maybe even less than that kind of deal to really try and help the Lightning make another great push. So,
I mean, do you think that he's worth more than 4.5 to the Bolts with what he's bringing to the table? I mean, he brought 64 points, but he's usually in the 40s for the most of his career.
I think Killorn is better than people give him credit for. It's funny. Killorn has been the guy, the punching bag for the Lightning for so many years now. I mean, how many times over the last 3 or 4 years? Every time the trade deadline comes around, the Lightning need cap space and they need to make a trade. Killorn is the first guy to come up. And he has been a consistent, reliable player for the Lightning. And I know he can be kind of streaky sometimes, but I think he's a solid piece in the lineup. So
he's really good in the playoffs. Those that want to trade him once it comes to the trade deadline, I think it's a ridiculous time to do it. If you're going to get rid of him, you do it in the beginning of the season, because when you need him most is at the trade deadline. That's the guy that you want to acquire at a trade deadline.
So to answer your question, Joe, I do think he's worth it. Like $5 million, I think you're right. Like it's high. It's not great for us, but I do think Killorn would be worth it, and especially what you're talking about. If he's willing to take even less than that, fantastic. I don't know about the term or how long he actually wants to play, but I had him at a $5 million 4-year deal. So JBB is a wizard, as we all know. So who knows what he can work out? But Killorn is a big part of this puzzle. Because he knocks out half the cap space right there.
Another thing I want to consider and kind of speculate is we know Killorn, he likes the spotlight. He's a very personal guy. He's a jokester.
The influencer.
He's the influencer. I mean, he's Doc Talk. He's the influencer. So one thing that he can, I'd fall back on, but I truly do see this happen. I feel like he'll probably take his talents into the TV and media industry. I mean, he's too good of a personality not to. I think people, networks would be lining up wanting to hire his services, whether it be with I like Biz. But I think I like Biz. But I think Killorn could be a good personality. I mean, like, he's been on Spit and Chicklets. He's buddies with Biz and all the guys on there, and he really lets it fly in a kind of different environment. So I think, he could make some money post-career. Those TV analysts get paid pretty good. I think he's a smart enough, well-spoken enough guy that he can take those talents and make some money after his career is over. Of course, any sane person would want to make as much as they could. This is just me kind of doing the mental gymnastics on keeping him here at a reasonable price for a decent amount of time, is that he can make money later in his career. Mental gymnastics.
He's someone that would be able to transition into making additional money if he is really serious about playing here or retiring. I doubt that. I mean, he's still that isn't a very good business decision on his part. I think if he can get $5 million a year for a few more years, I mean, that's serious money.
Well, let's say you do move on from Killorn and you don't bring him back and he retires, or maybe he goes somewhere else. I don't know. But who are you using to replace him? Because you do have a lot more flexibility when it comes to cap if you are not re-signing Killorn. Now, Ross Colton is a great player, and I think he's got a bright future, and he's probably going to be one of those guys that we have to lose due to the cap, and he goes on and plays very well, like the Marchessaults, the Gourds, all of those other Lightning players that are in these Stanley Cup playoffs right now and still playing well. Verhey, another one. So who do you guys say that they would go on? Is it Ross Colton, or is there somebody maybe on the free agent mark that you think that they could possibly go off? Hey, maybe it's Capo Caco, who we're talking about in the last episode. Maybe he's the one we go after. I don't know. Is there anybody you guys would go after if you're going to lose Killorn? Who is his replacement?
Well, the Colton situation's pretty difficult just because he's an RFA. So I guess it's benefiting the Lightning. I'm not sure what his arbitration rights are. I feel like he could probably command a pretty decent price from maybe a team with a little bit more cash to throw around. I've heard teams have interest in him. I know the Canucks have interest in him. And I think, being able to play somewhere else, somewhere higher up in the lineup might benefit him. But the Lightning do hold the cards here. I think they would be able to, them owning their rights, they could maybe, trade him for a pick or two or something, or, a decent pick, or maybe even put him in a package and an upgrade via trade instead of free agency. I'm not sure. The Lightning really don't have a lot of assets to do it. I know Ross Colton isn't a, extreme, trade chip, especially as a pending RFA, but I could potentially see a trade involving him. Because I know teams have interest, and if the Lightning can't do it, might as well get some assets for it.
Oh yeah, and that is one thing you could always trade. It's usually not worth very much, but if you're trading away the rights of a player before you sign them, you can still manage to do that. But the for Ross Colton, that's someone that I would rather keep. He's someone he's 26. Hold on, I got it actually right here. Yeah, he's 26 years old. His game continues to improve every year, and I think that he's somebody that could continue to blossom into an even better player. Is he a top 6 guy? I don't know, but he definitely could be someone that plays, more minutes, if you will, or plays a bigger role on the team with who we have.
I think he's going to be one of our cap casualties. I think Killorn is a guy coming back. He wants to play here. I think he will take that home discount, which will allow JVB even more flexibility. And I think, unfortunately, you're just not going to be able to afford to bring him back unless, well, no, I really can't see it, because if you sign a guy like Alex Killorn, then you have to sign a couple other players, call some guys up, even at $1,800,000 for those guys. You're just not going to have the cap to bring a guy back like Ross Colton. I don't know if he would qualify. You guys were talking about trading his rights potentially, but I don't know if he would qualify for if somebody did offer sheet him, if the Lightning could get any compensation for that. It depends on, of course, what kind of contract he's offered. I don't remember where the minimum salary is to even be eligible for that. I know they posted it recently, but it changes every year. And so maybe potentially they could get some assets back for, as you guys mentioned, a guy like Tanner Jeannot, who cost the Lightning a lot of assets this year. And speaking of Tanner Jeannot, he's another big part of this puzzle. And if the Lightning brought him in as a long-term guy, I know the Lightning want to sign him and bring him moving forward. I looked at some comparable contracts for him as well. Same thing that I did for Alex Killorn. And either you had guys basically staying at the same amount of money that they had signed a contract for, or you saw a slight increase where they went from maybe about $700,000 to $1.7 million. So my guess for Tanner Jeannot is I think they obviously want to bring him back. I think they could sign him to another short bridge deal just to kind of see where he's at. I think he does bring a nice physicality aspect for the Lightning, and maybe he can come in and sign a deal around $1.5 million. But I think that's about the highest I would go for a guy like Tanner Jeannot. But you gave up so many draft picks, you almost have to bring him back.
Yeah, he's coming back. That's got to be one of the major pieces of the puzzle here for JBB and who to sign. I mean, that's a guy that you want back too. He brings energy and some physicality to the game that there's really not anyone outside of Maroon that can do that. And Maroon's getting a little slow too.
Yeah, they gave up way too many assets to just let Jeannot walk. And of course, he couldn't, really walk. But I could see him signing a fairly cheap deal. He had a less than stellar time here with the Lightning, so I could see him for. I'd like to see it for about $1 million, not much more. I'd take less, but I think he really hadn't proved anything to anybody. I mean, I'd love to have him, of course, but I think, we'll be able to, sign maybe a short bridge deal that he might be able to grow out of. Hopefully he could, if we do sign him for cheap enough, it'd be great if he outperformed the number I'd like to see him signed at.
Mm-hmm.
Eureka found the thing that I was looking for. So our producer in the background, thank you for that, Eureka. But so for Ross Colton, again, it depends on the kind of contract that a team offers him. But if it's under $2 million, it would be 1/3 round pick. If it's below 1.3, it'd be no compensation. But I do believe Colton's a guy that can get over 1.3 million. So 1.3 to 2 million is a 3rd round pick, and then 2 million to 4 million is a 2nd round pick. So I think that's honestly a pretty decent, I don't want to say best case situation for the Lightning, but that wouldn't be bad to get a 2nd round pick back for Killorn if some team decides to go after him and tries to offer sheet him, or even a 3rd round pick at least. That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for the Lightning, especially considering they literally do not have any draft picks this year until the 6th and 7th round.
What do you
picks
think?
Don't matter.
What do you think Colton is worth? Like, 1.3 seems definitely way too little. 2 million seems too little. I don't know. I think, anywhere in the realm of like 2.75 to even, 3.25, I think he's worth that. I mean, he could honestly argue for more. He's, on the verge of 20 goals each year. He's a 35-ish point guy. I don't know exactly how many he finished with this year, but he's I wouldn't 32. Call him a consistent player. Okay, so that's in that ballpark. 15 goal, 15 assist area. I mean, that's a useful player, and we also have to think about, some of the other aspects of his game as well. I mean, he regularly leads the team in hits by forwards. He's pretty physical for being a, smaller-ish guy, but, Joe thinks he has the best one-timer on earth. So
just on the right side of the ice for the Lightning.
He had a $1.1 million deal as 1.125. I would say he deserves maybe $1 million increase, so 2.1. Although I don't know if teams would be willing to do that, just because then they have to give up a 2nd round pick instead of a 3rd. So if I had to guess, teams might offer him right at 2 million just to keep them under the compensation to only have to give up a 3rd round pick instead of a 2nd. So I think he's worth 2.1. I would sign a guy like Ross Colton for 2.1, but I don't know if teams will be willing to do that depending on their draft surplus, of course, because if you have a ton of draft picks, you can give them up. Because as Joe says, draft picks don't matter. Joe, they do, they could turn it. That 2nd round pick could turn into a Nikita Kucherov. You never know. So they can have a lot of value for you sometimes, especially when you got such a great scouting department like the Tampa Bay Lightning do.
But could be is like, I don't know. It could become a good player, but more likely than not, it's my dogs are agreeing with me. More likely than not, it's not going to be something that amounts to anything.
No, you're right. It's all like Matt said. It's a speculation thing. You don't know at the end of the day, but getting current guys is more of a set thing, or more you can make a more of an educated guess, I would say. But you have to draft players at some point to build that. That's how the Lightning have had so much success for the last couple of years. They've been able to call up on guys that have been able to come up and replace some. Ross Colton was one of those. He was playing in Syracuse, and then he jumped up to the NHL level and did fantastic in the transition. I'll tell you what, though, this is the hardest time of year for people who have jerseys of players because this is when you lose those guys and they – then your jersey feels irrelevant. But
what should they do about that, Jake?
What can they do about it? That's a great question, Joe. They can head over to shop.rblrsports.com and check out our awesome inspired merch for all of the different teams. You can use code BOLTS to get 10% off of your order. Again, you got the Rays, the Rowdies, the Lightning, the Bucks inspired theme merch. So many great shirts to choose from. Be sure to go over there and check it out. Links, as always, are in the description right here on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on these future episodes. And again, that's shop.rblrsports.com. Use code BOLTS for 10% off of your order. Now, we were talking about some of the guys that came up into the AHL. Let's take a look at some of those guys that could possibly come up for the Lightning, because I think they are going to have to rely on that a lot. Because when you look at the team, even if you sign Killorn or you don't sign Killorn and you sign Perry and Belmar and Tanner Janot and Colton as well, you're not going to have a lot of room to fill all of the spots they need to.
All right, so buckle up for this one real quick. If we lose Killorn, does ABB finally find his spot in a top 6 role where he can sustain being in the NHL?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
he keeps being put in bad spot. He's played on the 3rd and 4th line. That's not really the type of player that he is. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's faltered so much. Could this be a scenario, though, where maybe
he's played with the top lines when he's come up? He's played with Stamkos. He's played on the power play, and he's never been able to transition what he's been doing in the AHL to the NHL. And I just don't know how many chances you can give him. You have to earn your, I don't think you just could be thrown into a top 6 spot. I think you got to kind of earn your way up there. So listen, I'm a huge ABB fan. He wore my favorite jersey number 60 for a little while there. And I want him to succeed. I was very excited when we first signed him, but we've called him up to the NHL so many times. It's not just the Lightning either. He was playing for the Kraken for only a couple of weeks, I think it was.
Yeah, you got 2 games in with him.
2 games. Like, there's clearly something going on with ABB that's not just, well, he's playing really good in the AHL. Something isn't translating because multiple teams have sent him back down to the minors constantly, and he's never been able to crack the NHL lineup. And I don't see what would make this year any different.
I mean, that's pretty fair. This so in his every stint that he's had in 2020 or 2020 to 2021, he played 15 games. He had 3 goals. 21-22 season, he played 14 games, had 3 goals. Also in the 21-22 is when he had 2 games for the Kraken where he had 1 assist. And then this year he got 1 game in and didn't have any other stats.
I don't know if he can do it. I hope he can. That would be great for the Lightning to have a guy like him come up and he could fill that spot of Ross Colton or Alex Killorn, whichever guy that you're not able to bring back. But I don't know if I have the confidence. What about you, Matt?
I'm starting to think that it's got to be something more than just, there's not a spot for you on the team or, blah, blah, blah. I feel like there might be, again, the speculating here, but I feel like there might be something with the coaching. Maybe John Cooper just doesn't like him, doesn't think he works well on this team. I don't know, because there's no way somebody with that much talent, that much skill, just absolutely does not have a place on this team. I wonder if it might be an attitude thing or what. I have no idea other than, just again, going for some mental gymnastics here, but again, there's no way somebody that talented, that skilled, somebody that consistently good in the AHL and somebody who has had decent numbers in the NHL just can't be given a fair chance with this team. I don't necessarily understand why not. So I really am kind of jumping through hoops, trying to figure it out because just the answer isn't coming to me anymore.
Well, part of his defensive responsibility, that's a huge thing, and he's always been a little bit suspect on that. Another part of it might even be a size issue too, because he's not a huge guy. He's under 6 foot, and for a while there, the Lightning were starting to, get smaller. It felt like until they started filling out some bigger roles again, losing guys like Goodrow, right? He's a sizable player out there on the ice, but he's only Barry Boulet is only 25, so there's still
25. He's still young.
There's still a chance. I mean that he could continue to grow his game, and this might be the final chance for him. After that, like I've joked in the past, use him as a trading chip, or maybe he's just someone that helps people develop in the minors.
Go on, Jake. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, to be fair, that the Lightning have held on to him. So clearly they still think he's got a shot and got some potential, or else they would have moved on from him by now. But I hope he makes it. I hope he does. He could be a big help for the Lightning, especially with this season, and considering you're going to lose some guys, especially on the forward core.
And another name that I had in mind up until 3 or 4 days ago was Simon Reifers. He had a pretty good year. He had a good playoffs with Syracuse. He had a good regular season. He was second on the team in scoring, just behind Alex Barré-Boulet. I was, not expecting nor hoping to see him on the Lightning next year, but I was, keeping my eye on him. And it came out the other day that he ended up signing a deal with a team in the Swedish Hockey League. So he's no longer a member of the organization at all, but he's somebody that I thought we might be able to get some serviceable games out of this coming season. But I guess that will not come into fruition.
I know some people were disappointed about that, but at the end of the day, clearly the Lightning didn't think he had a future here with the team, and he probably realized that through contract negotiations, and that's why he decided to go over to the Swedish league. So, I have to sit here and trust the coaches and the scouts that in the Lightning department because they've been so good. So I think clearly they saw something there that just wasn't going to work out in the future. I don't know what it was as an outsider, but I think there's a lot of other guys that could potentially come up and make impacts for the Lightning. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for them. One guy I do think that can come up and make an impact for the Lightning next year in the backup goaltender position is Hugo Alnefelt. Now, I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on him as well, because listen, Brian Elliott, he signed a $1 million deal. I don't know if he's going to retire. He hasn't made a decision on that yet, if he's going to come back. But I don't think the Lightning are going to be able to afford to bring him back, even at a low cost of something like $1 million. Maybe if he takes a vet minimum, they could bring Elliott back. But Alnefelt is a guy that you could easily call up and play in that backup goaltender role. Now, he didn't have a great year 2 years ago, and now this last year, he had a decent year. He had a really good playoffs. I'll pull up his stats right here for you. So, last year, he had a 2.77 goals against average with a 904 save percentage. And then in the playoffs, with a 1.73 goals against average and a 900 save percentage. The year before that, 3.14 goals against average and an 882 save percentage. So he's still a really young guy, and I don't know if he's ready to go, but I think he might have to be ready to go. I think he might be one of those Nick Perbix, Darren Raddysh situations. You're going to have to grow it fast because the Lightning are going to need a backup goaltender, and there's not much else they can go to.
And realistically, he's only got to win, about a third of his games for the Lightning to be able to still make the playoffs. And once you get into the playoffs, we know that he's not going to see any rubber at all. So it's not a horrible scenario for him too to back up the greatest goaltender in the world and get some learning lessons from him.
Yeah, learning from the best, and also not to forget about Franz Jean, the goaltending coach for the Lightning. He's been the goalie whisperer for the last decade with Bishop and Vasilevsky. So no better person to learn it from the best than Jean and Vasilevsky. But I think he'd be able to step into this role. Of course, goalies are the biggest wild card of anybody you could ever have on your team. They could be a first overall pick and turn out to be a horrible, unusable goalie, or a goalie you've never heard of coming out of Siberia, who is just the next crazy phenom goaltender in the league. There's such a wild card, but I do think that we've seen enough. That we've seen enough development from him. Of course, AHL numbers rarely do translate into the NHL, but again, I think being mentored by one of the best, I think a lot of his skills will carry over. Of course, yeah. I don't think he's gonna be challenging Vasilevsky for the starting position anytime soon. But if he can give us some valuable games and maybe even turns into an actually decent goalie, then great. We have an asset.
Right, and that's the way you would treat that. You treat it as someone that you developed as an asset. You trade them for anything but just picks. But you trade him away because Vasi's 28. He's not gonna be somebody that's gonna have to leave the crease for maybe even another 10 years, which is be amazing to think that if we could keep him for the duration of his career, how great of a pick that guy was.
And I know we're not doing a season preview right now, but I'll put a bold prediction down right now. I think Vasily is going to come back and have a heck of a year next year. I think he was really frustrated with how this season went, and he was talking about in his exit interviews. I think he's going to come back really, really strong, especially if he's able to management the amount of games that he plays. And hopefully maybe Alnefelt can be that guy to help him do that and win a couple of games for the Lightning. Because I think he did earn it. I think he had a good year this year, and maybe he deserves at least a shot. Worst case scenario, you go out and sign somebody later and work that out. But I think he's a guy that could potentially have a chance. Now, continuing with who could come up for Syracuse, there is a player that the Lightning got at the beginning of the season, but then never ended up sticking with the Lightning, and that's Myers. Now, his contract actually goes down this year. I know that's really crazy, and where have you ever heard that before? But Myers is going to be making $1.25 million next season, so he's a guy that isn't going to cost you a lot. But the good news for the Lightning is that their defense is actually the place that they have the least amount of worries, just because you have Victor Hedman, Eric Chernak, Mikhail Sergachev, Nick Perbix, and Darren Radish. You still have Bogosian and Hayden Fleury as well. So I want to ask you guys this. Do you think Myers has a chance to make an impact for the Lightning on the NHL roster next year? I don't think he does, just because of guys like Darren Radish and Nick Perbix. I think they're going to be sticking around long term. You could maybe replace Hayden Fleury with Myers, or even Sean Day possibly. But again, the issue with Myers this year is even at $1.25 million, that's still a lot of money, and there's not much room. There's other places the Lightning would have to take off some cap if they wanted to have Myers up on the team.
Nah, the few games I saw Myers play with the Lightning this year, I was pretty unimpressed. That McDonough trade just looks worse and worse each day, and I get it was for cap reasons, but even with I'm expecting Ian Cole not to be back, and with that departure, we still do have a plethora of good quality defensemen. I know Bogo, he has been kind of falling off a cliff. As much as I say Bogo for Norris, it's really getting harder to make that joke. So I don't know. I still think he is pretty serviceable, but I don't think we're going to see much, if any, of Myers next season, unless he just really does have a, truly stellar season in Syracuse. I'm not expecting to see him.
Yeah. And I mean, the greatest thing that he's bringing this next season is the fact that the cap hit's reduced from where it was. I think it was kind of a failed experiment, and also a little bit of throwing a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, sort of thing, in terms of defensemen at the beginning of the season. And he obviously wasn't one that stuck. So I don't think he's going to be someone that we're going to be seeing a lot of. And I hope that we don't have to see a lot, because like you said, Jake, a lot of the guys that we have are solid. They're really solid. Cole had good spots and bad spots this whole season, but look at Perbix, who just came out of nowhere, and then Radish, who was playing very well in the A, and then took him a few games to get adjusted, but once he did, he was playing really well too. So I hope we don't have to see much of Myers. I do have one other thing that one of my buddies was saying that could work out, that if it's kind of one of these interesting takes, if you want one for filling some gaps.
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
All right. So if Killorn was to sign for slightly less than he's making right now to stay on the team, let's call it 4
million.
Yeah. So and then also Colton doesn't get re-signed. What about bringing on somebody that has won 2 Stanley Cups, is a prolific goal scorer? He's getting a little bit older, but he's also still hungry for another cup. What about American superstar Phil Kessel for about $1 million a year?
It's definitely a guy you could bring in. I mean, he's a veteran guy. He knows how to play the game of hockey. And for $1 million a year, I mean, you could make that work. But does he fit on the type of game that the Lightning would play? I don't think he's a viable replacement for a guy like Ross Colton, who's a younger, speedier guy. Because Kessel is getting old. How many points did Kessel have last year? Do you have it pulled up in front of you, Joe?
For this 22-23 season,
Correct.
he got 36.
Okay, 36. So he's still scoring. Like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
And
14 goals on it. Playing now. So this was a proposition that my buddy brought up a couple of weeks ago, and knowing that we were going to have this show, I kind of put it in the back pocket to kind of cut its legs out from under it a little bit. He's playing for Vegas. Well, he's not playing for Vegas right now. He's been healthy scratched basically the whole playoffs, and he played in the Winnipeg series, but he didn't play. He hasn't played against Edmonton, and maybe that is a speed thing where his speed isn't fast enough, but he is a guy that can really shoot the puck. He's always had one of the best snapshots, and sometimes you don't need the most speed. You just need to be able to get the shot away quickly. And I feel like sometimes guys like Ross Colton haven't been able to actually get the shot off when they've been in good scoring areas.
I think Phil Kessel, I mean, he's still got a bit of a step. He's not like, Pat Maroon or Corey Perry out there with cement skates, but I think he's still got a little bit of step. I know, since the beginning of his career, people have really bugged on about his defensive abilities and, of course, his off-ice habits. We all know he loves his Cokes, he loves his hot dogs, and it's just not going to change. There's some really great Phil Kessel stories with hard coaches and hard diets they're trying to get him on. He says, I'll retire right now if they take Cokes out of the locker room. I'll retire right now. I would take Kessel at $1 million. I really would, but at the same time, I don't know if he really fits, what this team needs right now. I do like the galaxy brainness of it, but I'd take him, but I just don't know if that's what this team needs.
You know what, though? Like, I was looking at it as a Ross Colton replacement. What if you look at it as a PEB or even Corey Perry replacement? Like,
No.
He's similar. I know those guys are tough, physical guys, but hang on, Matt. Hear me out here. Hear me out.
No.
I think Balsers is going to be a guy that's going to come up for the Lightning and make an impact next year because you can sign him to a cheap deal. He's not going to make more than $1 million, I don't think. Maybe 900, 800,000, somewhere in there. And he can be the more speedier, somewhat of a Ross Colton replacement. And maybe you bring in a guy like Phil Kessel to replace PEB or Corey Perry. Now, I know both those guys are more physical grinder players. Phil Kessel can do that a little bit. He's more of a scorer, though, I would say. But honestly, I don't think I would hate that a ton. Now, Matt, you sound like you were completely objecting to that idea.
He's not a very physical player. He's not, snarly, in-your-face type of player. He really does try to, stay out of the spotlight, just do his job, just score his goals. I would never put him and Corey Perry in the same sentence, unless it was, Corey Perry, harassing.
What about Bellemare? What about PEB? He's not
think,
as much of a physical player.
Yes, but I think they're just completely different types of players.
Yeah.
You're
not going to see Phil Kessel killing penalties, for instance.
Yeah,
that's true.
One of Bellemar's biggest flaws to me this year, and I even saw it last year a bit, was he was so defensive minded that it would almost compromise his offensive game, which it's not a bad compromise at all. Defense wins championships. He's got to, he knows his role and he does it really well. I think Phil Kessel is the antithesis of that. I think he's, all offense. He's just not going to be able to flesh out the bottom two lines that the Lightning have a true identity for those lines. He just doesn't fit the bill for those. He wouldn't get any time in the top six, which is where he, his type of player belongs. And I just don't think, I like Phil Kessel, but I just don't think he's the type of player that could adapt to that role. Like Corey Perry adapted from being a prolific goal scorer, Hart Trophy winner, Rocket Richard winner to being a semi-consistent fourth line, 20 goal scorer and the worm. Like he really, he had that, identity throughout his whole career, but throughout his career, it shifted less from goal scoring, more to pest. He's had it with him all along, but I just don't think Kessel can really adapt to where he would be playing on this team.
Let's throw it to the listeners. Let us know in the comments, would you bring Phil Kessel on a $1 million deal to the Tampa Bay Lightning? And let us know, maybe there's somebody else that we haven't talked about that you think could make an impact for the Lightning, whether it's a guy in the AHL, whether it's one of the guys that we could potentially re-sign, or someone on the free agent market. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. You can follow us at RBLR Sports or at RBLR Lightning for all of your Lightning content. Don't forget to like and subscribe right here on the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on future episodes. And if you're listening on the audio version of the podcast, we thank you as well. But be sure to head over to YouTube to check out the awesome video content as well. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.